You may know me best as my online alter ego at Broadway Girl NYC, but when I started this show, I called it Laura Heywood Interviews and not the Broadway Girl NYC show for a reason. And that's because while there's a whole lot of me that is obsessed with Broadway and all other theater-related content, there's also a lot more to me. In fact, I've been a sportscaster and I've worked in voiceover and all sorts of other stuff that has nothing to do with Broadway, and I'm really excited to get to share my whole self. There is a free podcast episode called Laura Heywood Interviews Laura Heywood, where I talk about identity and branding and authenticity, and really the goal of this show is to get you to know the whole me. So today I'm bringing someone in who's a little bit different from the first 8 or 9 guests we've had on the show. I can't believe we're already a month old. I've had Tony winners, Tanya Pinkins and James Monroe Iglehart, artists and activists like Thomas Sadowski and Ty Defoe, and some famous friends, Dan Finnerty of the Dan Band and Mandy Gonzalez from Hamilton. All of those episodes are now available for free through iTunes and other podcasting platforms. If you're listening live through dnrstudios.com/Laura, I want to give you an especially big thank you because the few dollars that you use to subscribe make it possible for me to keep making the show. They go to production costs and studio time. So if you're enjoying the show, whether you're listening to it for free or whether you are one of my beloved paying patrons, please consider contributing because it's a labor of love and I want to keep doing it. So my friend who's in studio today is someone who's had a significant impact on my life. His name is Harold-Gibbons and he is a trainer at Marc Fisher Fitness. If you've even glanced at my social media over the last couple of months, you know I've been in the midst of a program called Snatched in 6 Weeks, which is a kind of boot camp and nutrition program at my second favorite place in New York after Coney Island, which is Marc Fisher Fitness. I finished Snatched this weekend, and I promptly ate a sandwich, and finishing felt great, and the sandwich tasted great. It was kind of a kickstart for overall fitness, not a quick fix, they like to say. By the way, I should mention, I did pay full price for the program. They haven't given me any benefits for talking about them on the air. I'm truly just obsessed. So even though this may sound like product placement, I'm actually just a really big fan. I also have just learned so much there. I've been working out at MFF for 4 years. There is a Broadway connection, which is that I met Marc Fisher himself at TEDx Broadway. If you know my history, you know that Broadway Girl NYC was actually an anonymous alter ego for 6 years, and then I was invited to speak at TEDx Broadway in 2015. Marc was a speaker the year before, and he was there as an alum, and when he heard me speak and met me, he said, I think you might be at home in our little collection of weirdos up at the clubhouse. So I did go and visit the clubhouse, which is there's a longer name for it. Harold, can you fill it in? It's the Ninja Clubhouse of Glory and Dreams. Yep. I got it right. Literally, that's what it is. There are unicorns and glitter all over the walls. And this guy came at me. He sort of looked like a pro wrestler, and I was like, And then he just. I was introduced and he gave me a big hug and he was like, you're going to love it here. And I went, wow, this is like a contradiction and I love it. That was our mutual friend, Coach Fury.
Oh, yeah. I was like, which one of us looks the most like a pro wrestler? There's a few.
Yeah, well, he's
for sure.
He's working independently now, but he's still a member of the MFF family. And I actually kind of started weeping. I describe it as like I went down Alice's rabbit hole, and instead of feeling like I was in a strange world where I didn't belong, I felt like I finally knew where I was supposed to be. And Marc just took me into his arms and said, welcome home. And that was 4 years ago, and it's been my home ever since. MFF's slogan is Ridiculous Human Serious Fitness. Check out my Instagram. You'll see I literally the other day was wearing 2 tutus, pigtails, and unicorn leggings from Lisa Frank, and I was not the weirdest dressed one in the room. In fact, sometimes the trainers are dressed crazier than the ninjas, as they call us. It is the only gym I could ever imagine where fun was the biggest part of it. I have been pretty disciplined about working out over the last 5 or 10 years, but it always felt like a chore and sort of like laundry or something. Like you do it because you have to do it, but you know, it's not like you get up in the morning super excited to do laundry. I would have bet $1 million that I would never wake up excited to get up early to go work out. MFF has changed that. One of my very first trainers, in fact, I think he taught my very first ninja baptism, which is what they call the first classes you take, was Harold Kaufman-Gibbons. They call him the steward of strength, and he's also the education director at MFF. He created a trainer in residence program there. He designs a lot of classes, including those with including those with titles such as Superhero Strength and Kick-Ass Conditioning. And he's a super fun dude. He creates really valuable and entertaining content for YouTube and especially on Instagram. So I was confused when recently he posted a video that was titled "Exercise is Not Entertainment." And in the comments, a bunch of other fitness professionals were saying things like, "Thank you, I'm so glad somebody finally said it." And my reaction was, what are you talking about? You work at this place and you design classes for these programs where it's all about inserting the fun into fitness. I was like, what do you mean? I'm not supposed to wear my tutu anymore? And we got really deep into the comments discussion / debate about fun and fitness and how they should and do overlap turned into a really intense in-person conversation. And that led me to say, Harold, we're putting a pin in this conversation. We're taking it to the radio waves. So Harold, you're here with me.
I'm
Harold
so excited about it.
Kaufman-Gibbons, the steward of strength. We're going to talk about fitness and how it can be fun and how those two things might seem like a contradiction in terms, but I think we agree that they're not.
They're not.
So why post a video that says fitness is not entertainment?
In that particular context, it was specific to how fitness professionals choose exercises and how sort of all of us, when we work out on our own without a program that is written for us, how we choose exercises. And I think that a lot of it is because so much of the work that I'm trying to do is about being an interpreter of really, really high-level exercise science for people who either aren't as literate in movement or just don't really care. There's the folks who are like, I don't really want to go to the gym and try new things as much as I just want to do the things that are the most effective and get in and get out. And I see a lot of, it's like a really big range where some folks are like, I need to go to the gym and let this be the most exciting, most fun, intense, emotionally uplifting experience in my life. And some people go into the gym and they're like, what is the least scary thing I can do here? Mm-hmm. And when it comes to exercise selection, there's definitely a hierarchy of things that are more effective and things that are less effective. And I always approach it from that hierarchy first, and then I add the fun factor second. And at MFF, it's definitely easy to play that role. And I think that sometimes if we are scrolling through our Instagram, like on the subway, and we see something that looks really cool, we're like, oh, I should do that because it looks really cool.
Give me an example.
There are, I don't want to call out any specific accounts that I've seen.
Well, you mentioned...
There's a lot of combo exercises.
Okay.
There's like a ton of, like, take this kettlebell or take these 2 dumbbells and do 1 rep of these 7 exercises and then repeat. Mm-hmm. And most of the time it's being done with like acceptable technique. And then I've seen videos of people who are not fitness professionals getting videotaped doing it as like, hey, here's me doing the thing. And usually there's like 6 out of those 7 moves are not done well.
Got it. So you're saying just because somebody does something on TV or on Instagram doesn't mean that you should be doing it, even if they look really buff and strong.
Yes.
So fitness is not entertainment, as your caption for the video, which was just a video of you doing some deadlifts.
I was just doing deadlifts.
But it was really the caption, the content below the video that I think was the point. It was, you mentioned somebody was doing bear crawls on a treadmill.
Oh yeah, I saw a video of somebody doing bear crawls on a treadmill.
Are you worried that people are hurting themselves? Is that what this post was all about?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So can fitness be entertainment if it's low-level fitness that isn't likely to make someone endanger themselves?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's where the particular like nuances of the conversation that we've been having about this lie is because fitness can and should be entertaining, but I don't know if exercise selection should be the point at which you are choosing the part to be entertained.
And since you are the education director
Yeah.
and you plan all of the programs at a place like MFF, which does really put fun forward. I wouldn't say
Right.
that we put fun first, but we put fun forward as an identity.
Mm-hmm.
This is the sign literally in front of the gym says if you hate gyms,
Step
come
inside.
inside.
Yeah.
But I think that I read your Instagram
Mm-hmm.
as someone who is continuously looking to get motivated to
Right.
go work out.
Yeah.
And you give me a whisper of something to talk me out of it, and I'm going to use it as an excuse
Oh,
to stay
totally.
in bed.
Yeah.
And I can see how if you were. And the thing about social media is you scroll through it. I see 3 words: fitness is not entertainment.
And you're like,
I'm
well,
like,
fuck this guy. Move on.
yeah,
Am I allowed to curse?
yes.
All right. Thanks.
That's
Sorry.
one of the great things about being on the air at DNR Studios is we can do whatever we want. And again, that's why I put my name on the show rather than doing something somebody else told me to do. I get to own it. But that also means I have to own it. That's so scary. I'm going to point people again to dnrstudios.com/Laura, where if you're listening to the free version, please consider paying the $6.95 a month to get the episodes a week early. You can even listen live. And speaking of that, if you are listening live and you have a question for me or Harold or a comment, you can call in at 844-TALK-DNR. That's 844-825-5367. Okay. Social media. Good thing or bad thing?
I just stopped myself from immediately saying good thing. I think it's a good thing. Are we thinking like specifically this microcosm of fitness that we first engaged with
Sure,
in this post?
we could talk about it in that context.
I think in that, it's such a double-edged sword. It's definitely a double-edged sword. I think mostly it's a good thing because we get to share so many of the things that we're doing well. And usually I need the reminder and am quick to remind people that social media tends to be a highlight reel for what's going on in our lives. But I think the more we see that highlight reel from a physical activity standpoint, it tends to help other people with more physical activity. Because I don't know anyone who's posting a video of themselves, like a time lapse of them watching Game of Thrones sitting on the couch. But I feel like specifically with like the Instagram feed that I get to see, I see a lot of people who are moving or are sharing strategies to move or enjoyment that they have had while moving. And I think that if there's
That to me literally means fitness is entertainment. Like if you choose to tune into that stuff and you curate your feed so it looks like that, fitness is in fact entertainment.
Oh, I like that. You just made me think about this. I'm curious about like the entertainment value of doing the workout versus the like definition of using social media to entertain yourself watching other people work out.
Mm-hmm. It's like cooking shows.
Totally.
You know, like a cooking show is not nutrition,
Right.
but it can teach you about nutrition.
Yeah.
And making a cooking show or cooking itself could be, but content is such a like. We live in a world full of content creators. Anybody can create content these days. And while I guess there's certain content that people engage in, whether it's like an online university class or whether it's the news, which can be depressing and upsetting, like the vast majority of what we consume is entertainment.
Right.
And I think that I think that the spark of this debate about is fitness entertainment came from the fact that social media isn't either a good thing nor a bad thing, but it is a thing.
It's there.
It has some very great things and some very dangerous things.
Yeah.
But it is this Venn diagram, which I think I don't think I've done a single episode of Laura Heywood interviews without talking about a Venn diagram.
I love Venn diagrams.
It's my favorite visual metaphor. And somebody said to me, like, why are you talking about visual metaphors on the radio? But, you know,
We all grew up with Venn diagrams. So it's like a shared language.
yeah,
We can
I
see
hope
them.
so. I don't know of an audio version of a Venn diagram, although that would be a pretty cool thing to. Maybe it's like listening in stereo.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, it comes down to semantics, and a term I learned from our guru, our mentor, Marc Fisher, is that all language is metaphor,
Right.
that no words will actually be able to describe a complete experience the way you experience it in your body. And so I think that for me, I'm sort of actively listening, and I realized from this exchange, I'm actively listening for excuses to not work out. Whereas I think that piece that you wrote was for people who are creating programs for other
Right.
people.
Yeah.
And so it landed on the wrong ears in that moment.
Exactly.
Except
Yeah.
for the fact that it did spark this conversation,
Right.
which has led us both to, I think, several hours of getting into it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you brought it up, because in my head it was like 4 coaches stop choosing moves just because they look cool. Choose them for their efficacy. If they look cool, that is a great side effect. And then ironically at MFF we frequently are using moves that have a lot of like scientific validity, but talk about that less because they tend to be more fun or more exciting or more engaging.
Even just the way we describe things there,
Mm-hmm.
like what is it called? Anterior
Pelvic tilt.
pelvic tilt sounds boring or like medical.
Yeah.
But at MFF we call it.
Porn star.
Why do we call it that?
Google image the word.
No!
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
You can Google image anterior
pelvic tilt. Yeah, it's when the front of your pelvis drops down and your entire pelvis tilts forward.
It's sort of like twerking.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like
it's like the
top-
front half of the twerk. Yeah.
It's the front. Yeah, it's at the front half of the back half. I don't know. It's like when your butt is sort of popped out.
Yeah.
And then the opposite, when your butt's sort of tucked under, we call the sad dog,
Yeah.
which doesn't have quite the adult connotations.
It does not.
It's like when a dog tucks its tail between its legs when it's sad.
I think of the what's the commercial that the Sarah McLachlan song is on? Is it the ASPCA?
Yeah.
I think of that commercial every time.
Totally.
I'm like, I feel it. Like I
In
feel
the
the
arms of an
Yeah.
angel.
I feel the sad dog.
Yeah, I actually did a parody of that ad about don't call a cast album a soundtrack because it'll make composers you'll kill a composer every time
yeah.
you call it a soundtrack. We can get into that later, but yeah. So I came into MFF excited because I'd found my tribe of ridiculous human beings, and that I could go and basically I think of it kind of like when I was in kindergarten, I liked going to school because I
Yeah.
just got to go there and play. And the learning was secondary.
Yeah.
And I think that MFF probably wouldn't call itself a place where the fitness is secondary, but the fun is so forward.
Right.
And that's my favorite thing about it. And I
Yeah.
love getting into this with you because I feel like you're a fitness professional who's
Yeah.
interested in fun, and I'm a fun professional who's interested in fitness.
Yeah. That's our Venn diagram. That's where they line
Yeah,
up.
exactly. And I wish there were more places like MFF that did a better job of incorporating that. Do you think it's possible to have like truly great, perfect function or perfect form while also being fun forward? And like, can people who are at their own gym, at a home gym, or at what we call a muggle gym,
Yeah.
or even just doing body weight exercises or something like that, can they delight themselves while still doing it right?
Yeah, I think that is possible. I think that the deeper into the sort of working out solo on your own world you get, it becomes a little bit more challenging. Not that, I mean, I think we're doing some magical stuff at Mark Fisher Fitness. I also think that the environment definitely supports a lot of the community coming together and the way that we think about movement. Like, it is such a quality before quantity kind of place. One of my like fitness mentors has used the phrase "move well, then move often," and often could be in the frequency with which you're doing it or the amount of movement that you're doing. But I think that in the world, when people, I'm so used to using the phrase muggle gym, we've got ninjas who will go from the snatchery, right, where there's disco balls and strobe lights and there's this like crazy unicorn graffiti on the wall and they're doing kettlebell swings while getting coached. And they'll go from that really, really structured environment to the gym in their building that has a few weights and a treadmill, or the gym when they're like on tour, right, when they're on the road. And then there are so many variables that have changed that I think it becomes more challenging to recreate that. It would be a little bit weird if I try to, I'm thinking about engineering an environment where we like deconstruct the snatchery over time. if
the,
like
the snatchery being to define for people who
yeah, the snatcher is the classroom at Marc Fisher Fitness where we teach snatch in 6 weeks, and it is like our most, I think, stimulating environment we've got. There's
neon murals all over the place, like 20 disco balls.
Yeah.
They're confetti cannons. I mean, it's really a trip.
yeah, there was so much confetti on Friday.
Oh my gosh, I know.
And so like that environment, as useful as that is, I think that in some ways, I've been thinking about this a lot. I think in some ways there's like this hedonistic adaptation that like that last set of burpees and snatched can be so emotionally transformative that becomes the baseline for everything else. And I don't know if that specific level of joy is attainable
Without the community.
right. Like
Let
I
me
don't think
ask you this.
like deadlifts on their own are that transformative, but I think that if you can see how the deadlift can get you to this other part of your life, that can be transformative. But I think sometimes in the moment, that incredibly curated environment is extremely useful for people who are not driven to go to the gym all the time.
I think that, when Marc describes wanting to create a gym that has a feeling of being in play rehearsal, that's the best version of it. And fit that last set of burpees and snatched in 6 weeks is kind of like closing night. And then, everyone runs in the room and cheers for you. And it's like your final bow of the run. And it, you cry and you're like, oh, let's be friends forever. And it really is special. I think that by saying that that someone, whether on their own or in a community, can have a truly fun time while exercising, and also that there is some truly fun, entertaining content related to fitness, I think that you have just conceded that fitness is entertainment.
It definitely
and I'm
is.
right and you're wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What I will concede on my end is that it's really important to not assume that your body can do the same things that everybody else's bodies can do, or that extraordinary people's bodies can do.
Right.
I mean, I will say that I took care of my nieces for a week at the beginning of this year, and they got me into this Netflix series called Ultimate Beastmaster.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No, but I've seen like the trailer. I haven't watched it.
It's sort of like American Ninja Warrior. These elite athletes from all over the world get together and they compete in this insane obstacle course, which is shaped like a beast, where you crawl in. You basically go through its digestive tract. It's kind of gross if you think about it.
Now I need to
but
watch
when you
this.
fall into the water, they call it like you're in the blood of the beast, and you. A lot of the obstacles are designed to look like internal organs.
This
and
is
stuff.
like, I feel like this is like Joseph Campbell's mythology applied to exercise.
I don't know enough about Joseph Campbell.
That I'm on like a deep rabbit hole dive into his stuff, but like the mythology of being inside of the beast.
Oh yeah, but these are all like parkour champions. And
This is like Jonah and the whale, but with exercise.
totally. Yeah,
This is incredible.
It is, and you have to go in. You go in like through the tail,
Yeah.
which is really gross if you think about it. And then you like come out through the mouth of the beast. And only one Beastmaster reigns supreme. And we were like, oh, that would be fun. Wouldn't it be fun if we went and did that? And this was me and my nieces who are 11 and 13. And, because sometimes some of the things they do look easy.
Right.
And when you look, there are these little vignettes of going into their backgrounds and they're training for 12 hours a day. And some of them are Olympians, and, or their spouse or partner is the only member of their family who makes any money because they spend all of their time training. And
Right.
I actually asked one of my MFF trainers, I was like, I saw somebody doing one-handed push-ups, like with their one-handed plyo push-ups.
Yeah.
And why would anybody do that? And I believe the trainer's response was because they're an asshole.
That sounds like a very on-brand response.
And I kind of think that maybe that's where you were going with.
Yes,
with
that's
fitness is
that
not
is
entertainment.
the perfect. I thank you for bringing that up, because that is exactly would be my example.
Like sometimes people just want to show off what they can do that nobody else can do, and
Yeah.
that can fool someone who is either naive or untrained, or I guess a positive way of saying that would just be like really starry-eyed and excited to be like, I can do that.
Right.
And I don't know how much I would hurt myself if I actually tried to do a one-handed plyo push-up, because I don't think that my body would actually let me get off the ground enough to actually hurt myself.
Right.
But if that thing that they were doing of like, this is an easy thing,
Yeah.
was, did involve, a bunch of like backflips over cars or
Right.
something, and I decided to try that would be
Yeah.
dangerous.
Or like I've seen videos of people doing burpees with a backflip instead of a regular like jump hinge, and it's backflip, push up, backflip,
I
push
could
up.
probably do that.
And like
No, don't try it,
and
Laura.
it's
No.
like stuff.
Nobody try it.
There's definitely like it is entertaining to see, even as somebody who's like, hey, dear world, please don't try this. It is entertaining to see, and I think it becomes the difference between if you consume this content and you're thinking I could do that. Part of me is like, yeah, figure out how to get there. If that is something that you truly care about, figure out how to get to that level of expression of movement. And then if you see it and your consumption of that is sort of mediated by the thought, should I try that? Please no.
You know what it reminds me of is car commercials. We see these cars that are like skidding through the mud, or like these 4-wheel drive things that are going
Yeah.
up these creek beds and
Right.
stuff. And it always says, do not attempt. Professional driver in closed course.
The Jeep commercial that demonstrates like the original intention of the Jeep says, don't do this.
Right. And I feel like maybe that's the answer, is that we need on our fitness videos, professional fitness human, do not try at home.
Don't try this at home. Yeah. And I think for me, a lot of it, because the lens that I try to use for interpreting a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing content-wise is figuring out the difference between, are we doing things because they are exercise and they are important ways to take care of our body as we consider our health and longevity from now until the end, or are they things that we're doing for entertainment that might be well-intended but are possibly taking the place of absence? They're filling a gap somewhere else in our lives. And I think part of the conversation you and I had the other day was figuring out, are you doing things because they're exercise, or are you doing things because it's physical activity that is meaningful for you? And I think for some of those fitness professionals, for this person doing the one-handed plyo push-up, that is authentically meaningful to them. And I think for a lot of people, like playing with their kids in a park, or like walking a dog, or like going out with their friends and watching the sunset might actually be more meaningful physical activity that is both emotionally fulfilling and physically safer.
You said something, you did an interview years ago with Tony Gentlecore.
Yeah.
Am I saying his name
Love
right?
Tony, yeah.
Where you talk about, I think it was in that interview where you talk about the different, like fitness as being, oh my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. Activity is like nutrition, and exercise is like a supplement.
Yes. All right. I feel like you just put together the last 6 months of my philosophical life about exercise. It's a quote from Gray Cook, who founded something called the Functional Movement Screen, which is basically an assessment for how your body moves with these 7 fundamental patterns. And based on that, you can sort of predict what types of exercise you should work on. It would be the equivalent of if somebody was tracking their nutrition, and then MyFitnessPal, which is one of the tracking apps, was basically told you, hey, you're not getting enough of this. That's basically what the FMS does. And when Tony and I were talking about it, we were talking about that basically exercise has become, for most of us, the only physical activity that we're doing. And we are either working or entertaining ourselves with something, and then we exercise. And the idea that Gray has shared is maybe if we did more general physical activity, we would need less of the specific types of exercise that we're participating in, because we would get those in other areas of life. It would be the equivalent, if I try a nutrition metaphor, of with salads. I love me some salads.
I know, we're going to talk
And
about
for
that.
okay, so for most people, my thought process becomes just go eat some vegetables, and if you eat a decent variety of vegetables, you'll get enough nutrition to not have to worry about the vitamins and the minerals. Are you drinking Athletic Greens right now?
I'm drinking Athletic Greens right now. Is that yes? Or
Yeah, no, that's great.
So just to back up a little bit, Athletic Greens is a supplement. It costs about $3 a day. It's a scoop of basically like living green vegetables. You keep it in your fridge, and I add it to iced coffee concentrate because it's ridiculously sweet.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, just it dulls it's like the opposite of putting sugar in your coffee. I put coffee in my sweet stuff
Yeah.
to because I don't like stuff that's too sweet. But basically, the idea is for me, it's a backup plan. I love vegetables. I eat a lot of vegetables. I probably do eat at least one salad a day. But I do also. There are days that I forget, and I want to make sure I'm getting all of the nutrition from vegetables.
Yeah.
But I think there are some people who, this whole thing that's happened in the last few years with Soylent, this idea that you can get all of your nutrition that you need from a supplement.
Yes.
What
I just touched my head because
he just pointed at his head like he was making it like physically writing a note onto his brain.
I'm literally writing down Soylent right now. I have a fitness metaphor for Soylent. Keep going.
No, I want you to jump in with it.
So I think that in some ways we have both expected that exercise will sort of cover all of our bases. Exercise, I'm thinking of like formal exercise where you are seeking a specific physiological change. For most people in America, based on like our nation's physical inactivity and obesity percentages, I think for almost everyone it becomes fat loss. There's definitely some like muscle building. I know of an increasingly small microcosm of society that is like, I want absolute physical performance without care for aesthetic or health. But basically we're all a combination of like athletics or aesthetics all in the funnel of health, right? And
I wish that health was the primary motivator.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people, especially women I know, who have literally been sick, like, with eating disorders and stuff, or somebody who's gotten a terrible flu and everybody goes, "You look amazing." And they go, "Oh, all I need to do to look amazing is throw up every day."
Right.
And that can
Right.
give people an eating disorder,
Yeah.
especially young women and men. But I've personally known a lot of young women who fell into this thing like, "Oh, all I have to do for the aesthetics
Right.
is to be sick every day."
And yeah.
And so I hope that health is the primary motivator, but I know plenty of people who forego the health in order
Right.
to have the aesthetics.
Right. There's that switch. Even, I can't think of his name right now. I can't think of his name. The fitness editor for Greatest Magazine wrote an article once. It's incredible about how he got abs once. He got lean enough to have a visible six pack, and it wasn't fun because he wasn't able to do all of the other things that contributed to his quality of life. So then he just didn't worry about it anymore. And there's something in that for me where it's figuring out some level of desirable for you aesthetic representation, right? If you're like, here's how I want to look, and here's the capacity that I want my body to have, and here are the activities that I want to participate in. If they all sort of start to line up, but I think sometimes we drink Soylent in this metaphor, right? We want our exercise to be our Soylent. Everyone's like, oh, here's my new 7-minute long workout that was tweeted by fill in the blank magazine. But you also want drinking your Soylent to be the same emotional experience as going to 11 Madison Park.
Which is what?
As a super fancy restaurant.
Oh.
I've never been there.
It's too fancy for me to know
it's super.
about.
So like, I think that sometimes we're like, let me drink my Soylent, but I also want this to be like I'm going to a really fancy restaurant in terms of like the quality of the experience.
Right.
And if you just want to drink Soylent, I think for some people it's great. Like, go do your minimal effective dose workout, get it done, and then move on. I dream of a world where we sort of start to look at movement from the perspective of art more than science. And it's backed by science, right? Like, all of the really top, like, 3 Michelin star chefs know what they're doing, but they move beyond the culinary science and they're like, here's the experience. We're focused on the experience.
So but wouldn't you be upset if one of them was like, food is not entertainment?
I'm thinking of the chefs who've stuff that I watched, and I'm like, yeah, probably.
Like, you don't want it to be Soylent. And I guess
Right.
that was my visceral response to your initial
You were like,
post.
Harold wants us to exercise with Soylent.
Yeah, he wants to, but just by saying that it was so easy for me to read that as it shouldn't be fun, and if it's fun, you're doing it wrong.
Oh no.
And to me, I only know how to do it with the fun, and if you take
Yeah.
the fun out of it, I'll never do
Yeah.
it. By the way, I'm going to send you this video, and I'll tweet it too. My friend Marc made a video a few years ago, 2011, I think, called the 6-Pack Abs Challenge,
Yeah.
and he wanted to see if it was possible to go from being a sort of average, skinny-ish, like, dude in his late 30s, early 40s to having a six pack in just a month. And he did it by basically eating nothing but egg whites and, some vegetables maybe, and doing 2 ab workouts a day
All of the
for a
ab workouts.
month.
Yeah.
And he got it, and he's never been so miserable. His before and after pictures are amazing, but I don't think that, like, after watching the videos, that's something I'd ever want to do.
You're like, I don't want to do that. Oh, yeah.
That said, I had my after pictures for Snatch taken this morning.
Mm-hmm.
We call them progress pictures as opposed to before and after pictures,
Right.
which I really like because it indicates that we're all continuing on this journey. You're not
Yeah.
at the end of the journey. But, of course, we also all consider them before and after
Right.
pictures,
You're like, what
too.
happened in these 6
and
weeks?
I
Yeah.
went online and I went down a rabbit hole last night of stuff that fitness cover models do in the 24 hours before they
Right.
take their cover photos.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. They're doing stuff like, first of all, they don't drink any water for a certain amount of time. They take these crazy salt baths to get the water from their subcutaneous layer.
It like pulls it out of
out, and they're exercising to the point of depletion and exhaustion, and they're cranky and they hate life, and I started fasting at 6 p.m. last night so that I could, when I got my pictures taken
Yeah.
at 9 this morning, I'd have that much less.
You like there would be that little difference, yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's cheating, right?
No.
I also don't think it's encouraged.
There's no, and that's the thing. Like for something like the progress pics at MFF, we don't have like a rule for that. There's some people who are into that. There's some people who are like, yeah, like this might change what it looks like, so that we have like that different aesthetic representation after the photo's taken. And also, I think of it as just like you get to add variables. If somebody like thrives emotionally on adding that variable to what's going on, then like go to town. If somebody is like, that gives me anxiety, I don't want to add that thing, then like, great, don't do it.
Well, the other thing I learned from diving down this rabbit hole is that it probably isn't going to make a difference unless you have like 0% body fat. That for somebody like me, the difference that getting rid of the subcutaneous water from my skin from a hot salt bath is probably not going to show up in a photo. It might if I had been working out, and not eating a single carb for the last 10 years with the goal of being on the cover of a fitness magazine.
Right.
But I'm not even sure that my body is built for that to work anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this might be judgmental. I don't know how many of those people smile when they're not in front of a camera getting photographed for the cover of a fitness magazine.
Wow.
I think that smiling is a good metric for our lives. And I feel like if you're weighing your broccoli, then you might not be able to appreciate all of the things that life has to offer.
This is what's so crazy about this entire discussion is we're saying the exact same thing.
We are.
And I still don't understand. I don't understand the decision to put that video up. I know that you said that it's for trainers. So let's back up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about when you are planning a class cycle
Totally.
for a place like MFF.
It's happening right now.
What's the first thing you think of? Is it that you want to get in those 7 key movement patterns? Is that's your first?
Yeah.
How can we make sure those are all in there?
Right. We basically look at each class and we're like, how do we get these specific movement patterns in here in varieties, right? Because it's not always just do squats. Like Ninja Essentials has the basic versions of your squats, your deadlifts, your split squats. We've got those. And if we're looking at Kick-Ass and Superhero, I want there to be enough variety on that specific movement pattern that you have to be mentally engaged in the process of doing the exercise.
Say that again.
I want there to be enough variety on the fundamental movement pattern that you have to be mentally engaged in the exercise.
Got it. So like I know that you're kind of a sci-fi nerd, which I say totally lovingly. And I found these videos on your YouTube channel, which is just Harold Gibbons, I think.
Yeah.
Where you're doing Lord of the Rings
That was
movement patterns.
we did a class cycle that was based on Lord of the Rings.
And it was like instead of bear crawls, it was Gollum get-arounds.
Yeah, I think you just spin in a circle like you're smashing a fish on a rock.
But you also like are making the face,
Oh, yeah.
like of like that you want the precious.
Yeah.
And there was I can't remember the other one, but there was like a swing style that was designed on squats. It was a squat style
squat.
that was like about pulling a sword out or something. Like it was like involved a twist.
Oh, yeah.
As like a one-legged squat with a twist or something. Go to Harold's YouTube page. But I'm like, so a lot of those classes are themed, and the themes are for fun. But do you first make a checklist or start with Ninja Essentials, which is squats, deadlifts, swings, goblet squats, hinges?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the order changes
I mean,
up, but
the order always changes, but it's basically the same ingredients.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And so do you take those same ingredients and then sprinkle on some extra, extra toppings to make it into the other
that's
classes?
usually how I do it. I'll usually take the exercises that I know that we're going to include from a efficacy standpoint and then sort of vary them enough while still focus on like, does this add more than the traditional exercise?
Add more fitness-wise or fun-wise?
Yes. My first, full disclosure, normally I go fitness first. I'm like, hey, can we get a specific fitness outcome from this? And will it be fun? Because we've definitely tried some stuff. I've written some stuff in the last like 5.5 years at MFF where I'm like, yes, this is a very specific physical outcome. And that doesn't happen in the class environment. So then it either becomes the move is too mentally demanding or the move is too physically demanding that it becomes not fun because you're so sort of like on alert trying to get the move right. And then for some like the thematic elements, occasionally we've got all the moves and then the organization of the moves help feed the theme. So like we did, was it last November we did the Nutcracker Ballet as like a kick-ass class?
I don't know. I was gone for so long because I was injured. I did this whole year-long coming back plan with Amanda Ting, who has a background in physical therapy.
She's the best.
She designed programs for me that were designed to basically get me from my couch to finishing snatched in 10 months, and we did it.
Yeah. And like Ting's such a good example. She's got her doctorate in physical therapy. She's a DPT. She knows so much about what the body's doing. And then when she curates that class experience, like while she's teaching, I like with credit to her education, you don't really think about as Ting as a physical therapist.
No,
you
I think about her as like Danity Kane's #1 fan.
Yeah.
because
like,
she designs it around
like,
the playlist.
Like she brings the hype.
Stuff.
She brings so much hype to that environment, and it's so beautiful.
The whole MFF
It's so
team
beautiful.
is
Yeah,
so
like
beautiful. I
everyone's
really
great.
do feel like I should try to talk to the gym about getting a sponsorship deal because I'm already talking about it so much. And by the way, if you sign up for a new membership, make sure you mention that Laura Heywood, Broadway Girl NYC,
tell everybody.
sent you. But again, like I don't get anything from them that everyone else doesn't get too. Talk to me about this. Soreness is not an indicator of a quality workout any more than a hangover is an indicator that you went drinking last night.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Where's that from?
I don't know. No, I didn't make it up.
I've heard you talk. Yeah, I'm gonna tweet that later.
I've heard you talk about soreness not being an indicator that your workout was quality. And then I think I heard it on the Impact Theory podcast, but I can't remember who it was that said it.
Right.
But I thought that was a perfect way of saying it. Let's start here. Talk to me about soreness and why we shouldn't be aiming for soreness necessarily in a workout.
Yeah, I want to say soreness is like an unintentional, for me, like byproduct of what's going on from a movement standpoint. Typically, the mechanism that makes you sore between like 12 and 48 hours later, delayed onset muscle soreness, is when a muscle is contracting while it's lengthening. So it'd be like if you are stepping forward and your leg has to catch you and it has to contract, but it slows you down at the same time. It's those eccentric muscle contractions that tend to create more soreness. So more frequently than saying, hey, this is a sign that I worked out really hard, it's usually just a sign that you did something different, because your body has not become accustomed to that. And I would venture, and I like this specifically with the hangover metaphor, because like you can drink and not have a hangover.
Yeah.
And I think for most people that is more desirable than drinking and having a hangover.
Yeah.
But for some reason in our fitness culture, we've associated soreness with like the metric that it was a quality workout.
Well, I think it's because we lack so many other metrics. I mean, if
Right.
we go drinking, we have our memories, and we
Right.
can be like, I remember, I have the evidence, whatever
Yeah.
that evidence might be, whereas after a workout, I want to know that, especially if it wasn't fun,
Right.
I want to know that it had some value.
Yeah.
And how do I measure that value? It's not that I can put a tape measure around my bicep the next day
Totally,
and know if
totally.
it had value. It's not like I can, even necessarily pick up something that's heavier the next day.
Yeah, but you
so
can
how can I measure it?
Yeah.
I can measure that I'm sore.
Right. You can you hit that first set of stairs the next day and you're like, my butt is really not happy right now. And I think it's figuring out what meaningful metrics can take the place of soreness as a sensation. But the thing is, I think once we internalize soreness as the factor, most people end up seeking it. So usually in weeks 1 and 2 at MFF, I expect some soreness because there's new exercises. And usually in weeks 1 or 2 of our 4-week class cycle, people are trying the new exercise for the first time. And then typically when we have new ninjas who've come in, they're new to MFF, but they're not new to exercise. These are the ninjas that actually make me the most nervous because they have exercise experience and they're now getting coached in an environment that really, really prioritizes quality of movement. And sometimes if we have to slow them down to really make sure that the quality of movement is high, they're not doing the volume of work or moving at the speed that could be creating that soreness. And I think that sometimes it becomes a quest for perpetual soreness. But the bad news is that we've got genetics that are designed to help us adapt as fast as possible. So on a long enough timeline with enough exercise experience, soreness sort of just stops happening.
I wish hangovers were like that. The more
I
you
know.
drink, the less you get hungover.
Yeah.
Unfortunately not.
It's not that. I wish it was that simple.
There is one more thing that I must get into with you before we go into our last segment.
Let's do it.
And that is the very controversial view that you have gone on record with.
Yeah.
That Yoda would be a better coach than Dumbledore or Gandalf.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
My heart rate just tripled. So I think that Yoda would be a better coach than Gandalf or Dumbledore because I love him so much. Dumbledore definitely covers Harry's ass a little bit too much.
Okay.
In that environment, it might be warranted, but I think that Harry definitely has some privilege, and one of the privileges is Dumbledore sort of helping keep things running behind the scenes, at least for the first 4 books.
So you're saying that a good coach would encourage accountability a little bit more.
Yes.
Okay.
Harry definitely gets into situations that he needs his support network for, which is a beautiful metaphor for community, right? Hermione probably is the star. Ron, sorry, Ron Weasley fans. Ron is sort of I'm here for comic relief. Hermione is the one who's actually getting shit done, and she's the brains, while Harry just pulls him into situations that Hermione then needs to use her brains for.
So you're saying Dumbledore is not a good coach for Harry, but you could argue that he was the perfect coach for Hermione. He was her headmaster.
But I don't think that she
headmaster,
needed
too.
him.
So she was coachless.
Yeah, I think just because she's such a badass. Hermione's the most badass person in all of that series.
Oh, agreed.
She's the best.
Okay. So what about Gandalf?
I think Gandalf is sort of martyrs himself for Middle Earth, which to be fair is great. I appreciate that he fought the Balrog and everything. It's awesome. But at the end, he sort of just great, we've all done this together, go off on your own. And I think that Yoda gets a really nice balance where he takes care of what Luke needs when they're on Dagobah. He's not... I think that if we could put all 3 of them on Dagobah with Luke and that X-Wing, I think that Gandalf would be, figure out a way to help Luke. I'm going to stick with everyone's going to help Luke because otherwise I'll get too confused with these conflicting metaphors.
Yeah. I was going to say, what if you put Yoda at Hogwarts? Wouldn't he be at a disadvantage?
Yeah, that's true. I'm thinking specifically about the darkness that is on the Dagobah system, right? It's there's like the dark side of the Force. This is more intense than I've ever thought about any of these things ever.
I would really like to challenge somebody to write like an academic paper
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, there's something in the way that Yoda supports Luke that I think Luke sort of he's given enough support philosophically, and he is given like 90% support emotionally, so that he has to learn that work comes from within.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I like Yoda as the coach. I think that sometimes Gandalf loves the hobbits too much, which I've read about in interviews of Tolkien. Like, Gandalf loves them too much. He like did not get to be like the god that was intended in that universe. And I think that sometimes Dumbledore is like, no, I need to save them all because Harry's like our last true hope.
So what does that mean about your own coaching style? Do you try not to love your ninjas too much?
No, I try to love them, but I love everybody. I think there's a difference between somebody choosing to go up in the bell that they're using because it's appropriate for them, and then being told to go up and being told that it's appropriate for them, but for that decision not to come from within.
I love it. Thank you for clarifying.
And that's like really, really hard for me sometimes, because I know that some of my coworkers, right, some of the other incredible trainers at MFF are like, here's your new kettlebell, go lift this, you've got it. And I think that without that person doing that, it doesn't necessarily happen outside of MFF.
Uh-huh.
So even though like I trust that most people can go heavier when they feel appropriate, and sometimes before they feel like it's appropriate, I'd rather hold back, let that decision come from within, and then have more sort of self-confidence come from their experience of their decisions rather than from their experience of my decisions on their behalf.
I'm going to be thinking about this so much. I feel like we got super nerdy in a whole bunch of different ways, especially in that last segment,
Oh, yeah.
which I cannot wait to post online and have people chime in, especially the Venn diagram intersection of fitness and sci-fi nerds.
Yeah.
Because I think there are good arguments on all
There's a lot.
sides.
Yeah.
I also think there are a lot of different kinds of great coaches. And I wonder, this is a separate conversation for your next visit, but
Yeah.
I wonder if, because you're also an avid mountain biker,
Yeah.
and I wonder if you were coaching someone in that arena, whether you'd give them different advice than you would if they were lifting weights.
Probably. Yeah.
We'll have to have a part 2 sometime.
Oh my God, for sure.
So MFF, Mark Fisher Fitness, there are 2 locations. One is in the Bowery and one is at 39th and 9th in Midtown, Hell's Kitchen. It is, it's like the Broadway musical of gyms. Sometimes I say it's the Broadway Girl NYC of gyms. Everybody there just immediately becomes family. And if you're in the area and you've ever just felt like you needed a community, even if you don't feel like you are looking for a gym, you might find out you were, like I did. It's glittery and full of unicorns. And unicorns specifically is where I want to land, because as we do at the end of every show, we do one last segment, just cause.
And that's...
Nope, wrong sound effect. Ah! I almost got through the technical aspect of the show. We do one last segment, just cause.
Just cause! Just cause! Just cause!
Which is where we talk about a just cause. And we shouldn't need a reason to talk about important charity organizations. We should do it just cause. Get it?
I love that.
I know. I just wish that I hadn't screwed up the stupid
Just
sound
cause!
effects.
Just cause! Just cause!
By the way,
Just cause!
I didn't press the button that time. I just
did it.
pounded the desk so hard that the mouse jumped and it clicked where the arrow still was, which is crazy. So I'm going to tell you about Story Pirates, which is the greatest organization I know. In fact, 2 weeks from yesterday is my 40th birthday, and as I do every year on my birthday, I'm raising money for Story Pirates. This is a group of actors, musicians, comedians, and educators who go into low-income schools, do creative writing workshops with kids, and then take original stories written by the kids and turn them into Broadway-scale musical theater and sketch comedy shows, and also songs. And there's a great podcast. And the reason that unicorns factor into this is there is an incredible story written by a little girl called All 8 Unicorns. It's about the last 8 unicorns in the world, and it is, again, to go into the Venn diagram mode. It is like when I think about service and arts education, which are so important to me, and the world of Marc Fisher Fitness, unicorns is really where we land. This is done as a live stage show. If you go to storypirates.com, you can find dates. They're in New York, LA, and scattered all over the country as parts of festivals and other tours. But most importantly, Gimlet Media has the incredible Story Pirates podcast, where they feature radio plays and incredible songs that all come out of the brains of kids. Any kid who wants to can send in a story, and everyone who sends one in gets a personalized response from Story Pirates. So as we close out today's show, first of all, I want to thank Harold Kaufman-Gibbons for being on the show and talking to me about fitness and fun.
Oh my God, it was so nice being here.
Do you think we landed at an agreement?
Oh yeah, I think we have been agreeing since the beginning.
Yeah.
Just with different perspectives that got us there.
I think so too. And I'm glad that you posted something semi-controversial, so it gave us an excuse to dig super into it. You can subscribe and listen live Monday and Wednesday, noon to 1 Eastern at dnrstudios.com/Laura. And if you're a patron there, you also get every episode a week early on demand. If you're listening to the free podcast version, I totally get it if you can't shell out any money right now. But what you can do for me is leave a review and rate it. Those 5-star ratings are almost as good as cash. They don't provide studio time, but they do help us get more listeners, and maybe those listeners will throw a few bucks my way. Please share with your friends. I'm growing this thing from scratch. You can check out my interview archive at lauraheywoodmedia.com. Follow me on all the socials at Broadway Girl NYC. I'll see you next time on Laura Heywood Interviews, and here's Story Pirates with all 8 unicorns to take us out. Here's Story Pirates with all 8 unicorns to take us out.
Hi, my name is Cece. I live in New York, and this is my story, All 8 Unicorns.
All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns.
I'm alone in the forest, but that's okay, cause I know I'm gonna have an amazing day. I'm feeling good because I'm feeling great. I'm a unicorn, and there are only 8.
All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns.
Would you like to come over and play with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yay! All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns. We're unicorns and we're galloping and we're singing our song that we love to sing. It goes all 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns. Huh?
OMG, everyone stop.
There's a unicorn there, but she's tangled up.
How did this happen?
It's really bad. I don't even want to say. It's too embarrassing.
All right, on the count of 3, let's just pull, okay? 1, 2, 3.
Pull. Pull. Pull.
Let's dance around without a care. We're super cool because we're super rare.
All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns. All 8 unicorns.
The end.
So you want your website to be